The country is mourning and celebrating a man who has been lauded as being a great man and a great, some have actually said he's the most significant, or not significant, but most consequential politician of our times. We pray for justice to be served. And just before we went to that story, I was speaking to the former Speaker of the National Assembly, Francis Ole Kaparo. And once again, thank you for joining us. And we're just getting to know where you were on the day that you received the news, and how did you take it?
Well, I was on my way to Nairobi Hospital when I heard this tragic news. It hadn't been officially announced. I got from a very reliable source, and I was thoroughly shocked. And the first thing I did, after a very confusing moment, I headed to his Langata home, Karen home, to condole with the family. And I met there Kenyans who were, like me, shocked by this news. It was something you didn't expect.
And for you, what are some of the main things that you remember about Raila Odinga that you feel, would forever be etched in your mind?
Well, let me say, the first time Raila Amolo Odinga came to Parliament, 1993, was also the first time I became Speaker. And he came to Parliament together with his late father. And it was his late father, together with the late George Saitoti, who actually escorted me to take my first oath of office as Speaker in 1993. Raila, like me, was young then. And he was in the opposition, which comprised a lot of luminaries, the likes of whom we are unlikely to see in Kenya in the near future. But there he was, very composed. A lot of times he seemed, in those early years, he seemed quite not at ease with himself, but yet he was also somebody very focused. Whenever he made a contribution, you could see the conviction in his face. You could hear the anger in his voice, particularly on matters relating to freedom, to justice and fair play. That was him at that time. But he grew bolder, grew more composed, and grew finally to become a politician, the likes of whom we haven't seen. And I mean, we haven't seen. I mean, all you need to do is look at the crowds that came into the streets of Nairobi in the last 2 days. We have in the past lost President Kenyatta, lost President Moi Kibaki, and even a Vice President, Omalwa Kijana and George Saitoti, and none of them, even all of them combined, you couldn't get the number of the crowd that was out there. Forget about the passion that was displayed. It speaks of somebody the Kenyans related to, somebody they thought had something to do to fix their lives. That is what he was. He fought for it with conviction. And you know, I have seen a lot of politicians, believe you me, in the last 15 years I was speaker, and a lot more after, but it is difficult to get politicians of that nature. All you need to do is to go back to the House of 1993-98. And you know, he was also somebody who was brave enough to do the unthinkable. I remember when he had a contest for the leadership of Ford Kenya with the late Wamalwa Kijano, and he didn't go his way, or he felt it wasn't going in the right direction. He left that party altogether, formed the National Development Party, NDP, but yes, did also something that hasn't been done before. He resigned his parliamentary seat and went to seek a fresh mandate. I'm dying to see another politician doing that. I'm dying to see it. And that is the right thing to do. If you don't agree with the policies of any political parties, the right thing to do is quit. And quitting means you resign and you leave that organization and seek a new mandate. He was the only one, to my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's the only politician so far who has resigned his parliamentary seat to go to seek a fresh mandate.
And that is quite an insightful thing, and I would like to take a pause on that for a bit, and we'll come back and speak more about some of the things you've actually said, like when you say we're unlikely to see luminaries like the crop of leaders that were there at the time. It would be interesting to understand why you feel that. And we shall be coming back to this conversation with the former Speaker of the National Assembly, that is Francis Ole Kaparo. But first, take a short break. We'll be back after this. Next leg of the farewell of Raila Amolo Odinga, and I am still in studio with the former Speaker of the National Assembly, and that is Francis Ole Kaparo. Mr. Speaker, you are sharing some pointers in regards to your interaction with Raila Odinga and your thoughts about him, and there's a point you mentioned that you don't think we are. You actually said we are unlikely to see luminaries like the crop of politicians at the time of Raila Odinga. Why do you think that we are unlikely to have that caliber of politicians?
Well, between 1993 and now is over 3 decades. Now, just look at it this way. In that house was Jaramogi Oginga Odinga and his son, both of them gone. In that same house, we had Kenneth Matiba, now gone. We had Martin Shikuku, gone. We had Georgia Nyona, gone. And what they used to call the young thugs. The young thugs are the likes of Professor Nyang' Nyong'o, Itobu Imanyara, Martha Karua, Wamalwa Kijana, Georgia Nyona, James Orengo, and a host of others. To add to those, you also had people like Mwai Kibaki in that house, now gone. Many many of those luminaries have left the stage. We will certainly, we pray that we will have that kind of leadership in the future. But the truth of the matter is, we are the poorer for the loss of that. And you know, the late Raila put his energy, his brain, and even his life to struggle for what Kenya should be. And Kenya should be, in his view, and also in my view, a country where all of us, all the Kenyan people, should feel that they are one and the same. He was also fighting for a just society in the allocation and use of national resources. That's why he put a lot of energy in the development of the new constitution with devolution, to enable resources to go to areas that have hitherto been denied. He was looking at the totality of Kenya, the Kenyans that were in many ways forgotten across the length and breadth of this country. He also fought very hard within Parliament and outside Parliament against injustice to fellow Kenyans by those in authority. And we really pray that those efforts will not go in vain. We need a country of justice to every Kenyan, that we all are the same, not only in the eyes of the law and not only in the eyes of God, but in the eyes of those who rule us.
Are you saying that we currently have no leaders who you feel are as promising?
I am not a judge. I am making my views. I have not judged anybody. But you know, it's also telling when people think that when you say there is a vacuum of leadership, they think you are attacking them. And why would anybody think in that manner? I am of the firm opinion that we used to have political leaders who worked very hard for the benefit, for the betterment of society. Wale waliokuwa wanaitwa watetezi. You know, that word has disappeared from the Swahili lexicon. You no longer hear watetezi. Unasikia sasa waakilishi. Na kuna tofauti kubwa kati ya waakilishi na watetezi. Inawezekana pia kuwa mwakilishi na mtetezi. Na ile ingekuwa bora zaidi ni kuwa na waakilishi watetezi. Na hapo ndio ilikuweko wale niliowataja. Mimi niliingia siasa wakiweko na wengi wao wameondoka. Mwenyezi Mungu atatupatia bila shaka viongozi ambao wanastahili kutuongoza, lakini wataka kuniambia ya kwamba hakuna pahali, there is no gap left by the exit of Raila Amolo Odinga in the leadership of Kenya. It's exactly what I'm saying, that we have had leaders who have departed this scene and we haven't had proper replacement. God will, in due course, of course, give us. But you know, to have somebody who puts his life, his comfort at risk to ensure that the general whole, the society as a whole, are liberated from oppression is not an easy thing. There are very few people who can do that. And he was one of the few. And that has been justified by the outpouring of an emotive mourning Kenya, and to a large extent, to some extent also, the neighborhood and the world.
So do you feel that, you know, they usually say there is a responsibility and a duty of an individual as a leader to hone and to prepare others to be able to step up and at some point fit into your shoes? Do you feel that, say, Raila Odinga did that well?
Well, you know, there is no school for leadership. I've never heard about it. And there is nobody who will take you to class to teach you. You learn along the way by listening, by watching the activities of the various leaders around you. He did not hide that. He did everything publicly, either through public rallies, through his party, or through the various government positions he has held. So I believe that there are people who learned from him. I have no doubt about that. There are people who learned what he stood for around this country. There are people like that. What I don't know is whether they will be able to fit into those huge political shoes and leadership shoes of the departed Raila Odinga. I think the only other time I saw outpouring of passion in barring of a political leader was when J.M. Kariuki was murdered and was buried. And I know there was a lot of outpouring of emotions across the country. It wasn't ethnic. This isn't ethnic either. It was felt across the country by people of different generations in the same manner as this one has been felt, but I think this is much, much, much bigger than what I have seen in the past.
All right, and you had alluded to, you know, Raila Odinga being quite a fierce debater in terms of being quite firm on what he believes in and what he would agitate for, even in Parliament. What kind of a person was he as a, you know, when he took to the floor?
Well, there were two Railas in the House when I was Speaker. There was Raila, the backbencher. But there was also Raila, the minister. And the two played different roles. And therefore, the way he went about addressing the House and therefore the country through the House depended on what he was then. I know as minister, he never came to the House ill-prepared. He always came very, very prepared to give answers to members of Parliament who sought to know different things that came under his portfolio. As a backbencher, he was also very, very incisive in debate and articulate. And he had a world view that very few people embraced at the time. He wasn't localized in his debating. He related the things that happened in Kenya or not happening in Kenya to things that were happening or not happening elsewhere around the world. And that was a person whose mind was not limited, was not localized. I think he never at any stage, I believe even almost to his death, I don't think he ever allowed himself to be localized. He had a wider view of things. And finally, you know, Raila was also different. The person and the name were different. If you met Raila, at least I knew well. Those years when I was speaker, of course, I wasn't meeting people in public places. I would only meet either in my office or through the chamber. But you know, he would be surprised at the way he was courteous to his colleagues. And he wasn't somebody who was bragging, and he wasn't shouting around when he was minister. I think he generally said what he did with a lot of courtesy to the rules of the house and to his colleagues. And that is what leadership is all about. And that is what we really need to embrace, the culture of interacting in a civil and civilized manner, and not in a shouting match, not through insults, and yes, not through vulgarities. The language of vulgar that is creeping into our political discourse. Is amazing how vulgar language is taking center stage. He never did that. I would pray that our leaders also avoid language that is vulgar, that is not acceptable.
But I do think there are times when Raila was, cited for, making statements that people felt were either vulgar or abusive. And I remember even when you were chairman of NCIC, you had raised concerns even about incitement.
Well, there's a difference between incitement and vulgarity.
But both have been mentioned.
Well, it depends on whose ears they went through. But I was just saying about what he said and did in the House when I was Speaker. If you want me to talk about what happened when I was in NCIC, I'll tell you, because I've had occasion, even then, to warn a lot of luminaries for saying and acting in a manner that was likely to bring our society into collision. I remember one time when, you remember there was something called the Pangani 6?
Yes.
Was it 6 or 8? Yeah, Pangani 6. Because there were two ladies who went to another police station different. But the other Pangani 6 came from all the political parties that were then there. And at that time, they were almost driving the nation into warfare. And I was responsible for cohesion then. And it was my duty to bring order back to the country. And I took the steps that cooled the political temperatures, and nobody was spared because of either your rank or your ethnic background or your political persuasion. And that's how it should be. And at all times, when you asked the Honorable Raila Odinga that you are out of order, in most cases, he would obey. and do what is the right thing. I am not saying, and I will never say, that he was an angel. He was a human being like you and me, and like every human being, he had his own weaknesses. What I'm saying in short is this human being, irrespective of the faults he had like every other human being, the good that he did for the country was much bigger and much more noticeable than the bad things that he could have done.
All right, and just as we draw to a close, having been speaker, and you know, we're seeing a lot of concerns about the integrity of the political class right now. Earlier on, we saw the preacher who was doing the sermon during the funeral, you know, calling out politicians in the name of, you know, having handouts, etc. Do you genuinely think that it is possible to have, or that we have, independent speakers of the House?
Well, first of all, let me say the following. Since I left the speakership, and that was January of 2008.
Yes.
Which is 17 years now.
Yes.
I've never spoken about Parliament. For good reason. I didn't want anybody ever to think that I wanted to go back, or that I had ill feelings, or that there were bitter grapes. I thought I did my bit, and the Kenyan people can decide whether I did right or I didn't do right. And this is the posture I would like to maintain. But that notwithstanding, my advice is the following. There is reason why Parliament was created. And there was reason why the executive was created. And there was reason why we had a judiciary, or we have a judiciary. Each one of them has a specific role expected to perform. But let also me question the following, that none of them can independently be away from the rest. So they are aspects of interdependence of the three arms of government. But they must be clear in their role. They must be firm in doing what they were created to do, and they must never, ever, ever go to bed together. They should never go to bed together. They should relate okay, but they should never go to bed. And I'm saying this because of the following. Look, Parliament was created to be a vent. The public would vent their grievances, their anger to the executive, or even to the judiciary. That house was created as an avenue to let out the anger of the public, to let those in governance know what is wrong with the country. It's like a pot, my friend. If you have a pot, put water, seal it, and put fire below it, and let it boil, and there's no place in which that pressure will come out, that pot will burst, and the pieces and the hot water will burn everybody around it. So my advice would be that each of the three arms of government was created for a purpose. For heaven's sake, let each arm perform the role it was assigned to do by the Constitution. I think we have a little problem with the new Constitution arrangement of governance. You know, in the old constitution, you had parliament, MPs and ministers in one roof. Now they're in different roofs. And so what happens? So the chairs of parliament purport to perform executive functions because they are no ministers. But somebody has to answer for somewhere. Where do you get that to go to the House so that it gets out to the public? Maybe we have to look at the current situation in which ministers are outside Parliament. I think we tried to ape the American system. We didn't do it right. We are younger than them by centuries. And I'm sure they never got where they are over the first 10 years. It took time to get that happen. So you see, we too need to get it right. But finally, let me say, because you asked me a specific question,
Yes.
the independence of the Houses of Parliament. First of all, during my time, there was only one speaker. So it was easy to judge because there was only one. Now, my friend, you have 49. 2 at the National Assembly
47.
and 47 in the counties. So when you speak about the speaker, you don't know who you are talking about. That time you knew who you are talking about. But I would urge, and I hope nobody accuses me of sour grapes. And I'm saying this in good faith, without pointing a finger to anybody. It is in the national interest that the speakership should remain neutral, so that there is a sense of fair play by all the political players, so that those in the opposition do not think that they have no role in the political management of the affairs of the country because the one in charge has taken a definite partisan position.
So you're saying that you feel that the speakers we have are not playing out their independent roles?
You are telling me, and I was telling you what ought to be. What is, I've said I don't want to judge. What is, I don't want to judge. The Kenyan people are there to judge. Now, not just judge those who are there, but even to judge me, whether I did right or whether I didn't do right. I am not a judge of anybody. I do not pretend to be the best that there has been. I don't also want to pretend that I know everything under the sun. I don't. But I'm just saying what ought to be. What ought to be is that there should be a system of governance that allows the public to air their views through their representatives. If you fail to do that, you get Gen Z, my friends. That probably is the reason why the Gen Zs went all the way to Parliament. I'm not saying that's the reason, but it probably is a contributing factor. And you know, if you don't want to look at yourself in the mirror, you are likely to move out into the public with the food around your lips. And somebody will tell you, my friend, go and brush your teeth. Let's not wait until that happens. Let's look at ourselves in the mirror and make sure we don't move out with the dirt outside there. But above all, nothing, and I repeat nothing, is as important as making society safe. We must make society safe by making sure that we don't have oppression, we don't deny them the resources that they themselves contribute through taxation, that taxation is used for their benefit, and that it is accounted for, and that anybody pilfering it must account for it.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and for speaking to us in regards to your views on Raila Odinga, the man he was, and his influence and input in the country's democratic and political fabric. We could go on about a number of things, and we could probably, discuss and have another interview where we can delve deeper, just to get and to draw from your wisdom and just to understand what some of the dynamics around the political space as you see it and as you saw it. We've been speaking to Francis Ole Kaparo, who is the former Speaker of the National Assembly, and he has been in politics for many years. He's a retired politician now, but still, and even politics. And we have been hearing from him about Raila Odinga in regards to how he interacted with him when Mr. Kaparo was the Speaker and Raila Odinga was in Parliament as an MP as well as a minister.